Hey everyone, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2019 Chevy Silverado 1500, we're going to be showing you how to install the B&W Underbed Gooseneck trailer hitch. Before we do that though, let's just take a minute, we'll check this out and make sure it's going to be the right setup for you. So nowadays, even with these half-ton trucks, they're capable machines and you can actually do some pretty heavy-duty towing with them. And if that's what you plan on doing, that's where a kit like this would come into play. Give you that attachment point that you need to hook your trailer up and pull it down the road. Me personally, I'm a huge fan of the B&W hitches. I think they make some of the best hitches out there. And if you're familiar with the towing world, you've probably seen the name, recognized the name, and there's a reason for it, because they know what they're doing. But this particular setup, I'm a big fan of it, especially in the short bed trucks, just because you don't have a whole lot of room back here. And with that said too, this kit will work with the long beds if that's what you have. But I like the fact that it's super clean, right? You don't have a lot of stuff going on, taking up a bunch of space in the bed of your truck. So you'll be able to hook up your gooseneck trailer, right? And then when you're not using the hitch, you can take the ball, flip it over, and actually store it inside of the hitch, which keeps everything together. It's out of the way. You don't have to keep track of the ball, or rolling around in the backseat of your truck or anything like that. So that's pretty cool. And you kind of get 2 for 1, honestly, because with this underbed hitch, you're actually able to use a 5th wheel head with it too. So B&W makes a 5th wheel head. It's called the Companion, and it's specifically designed to work with the underbed hitch. That'll drop into place, and you can hook up a 5th wheel style trailer as well. So you can kind of grow into it. If you have a gooseneck now, might need to tow a 5th wheel in the future. At least you'll be halfway set up. Or what a lot of people do too is they only have a 5th wheel hitch or 5th wheel type trailer, and they don't want those big rails, the traditional style rails in the bed of the truck taking up a bunch of space. So you can get this, the Companion, and be able to pull that 5th wheel around. Over on the side, the kit is going to have plates specifically designed for your truck, and that's going to make everything go together much better than most of the hitches out there. Again, it's just that B&W quality. They think things through and really try their best to make everything easy on you. And something that sounds kind of silly, but I think is important, is the handle mechanism. So this is how you would lock the ball into the hitch or open it up to take it out and flip it around or whatever you need to do. With the B&Ws, pull it out and just barely turn it, it'll lock into place. You don't have to search for that lock or kind of wander around and try to find that to keep it open. And that's not the case with all of them out there. And I could just see myself at nighttime in the cold or rain or something like that trying to deal with this. It's the little things in life, right? So it's good to see that everything's super easy to operate. Underneath the truck, here's what the hitch looks like, and fits up there nice and tight, clears everything, doesn't get in the way of too many things, and overall a good fit. We do get a lot of questions in regards to suspension enhancements, and if you're going to be able to use something like that in conjunction with this embed hitch. And it's hard to speak for every single enhancement out there, but generally speaking, you should be in pretty good shape. I do know that there's a set of air springs that's compatible with this particular hitch, and they just bolt up to the bottom of the frame, so you're good there. And a lot of the other ones on the market, like the ones that are more of a leaf spring style enhancement, don't see any reason why those wouldn't work, because they're not even close to the side plates on the hitch or anything like that. And the same's going to hold true for the Jounce bumper upgrade type enhancements like a Timbren or a Sumo spring. Really no reason you shouldn't be able to use those, because they're just not even close to the hitch or any of its components. As far as the size of the ball, goes. It's going to be 2 5/16 in diameter, so pretty much standard there. The safety chain openings are relatively large, and you should use, be able to use just about any size hook that your trailer might have on it. And the hitch is going to have a 30,000 pound maximum gross trailer weight rating, which would be the amount of weight pulling on the hitch. So weight of your trailer plus anything that you might have in or on it, and a 7,500 pound vertical load limit, so the amount of weight pushing down on the hitch. Now with that in mind, I do always like to recommend, it's always a good idea to grab your truck's owner's manual. That way you can make sure that your Chevy can handle that much weight safely. And something else I want to point out, for those of you with the short beds, whether it be the 5 3/4 foot or 6.5, something that people run into on occasion is cab clearance, right? Because in the short bed, the hitch sits up pretty close to the cab. And depending on how your trailer is set up, if it has an overhang or anything like that, you might run into some issues when you make really tight turns, that trailer getting pretty close to the cab corner. And if that's something you're worried about, B&W makes an offset ball, which drops into here and sets the ball back a little bit further, gets you some more clearance. So that's always something you could do. And for those of you with the short bed that plan on using the companion, that fifth wheel hitch that drops in here, I'd highly recommend getting one of these sliding type hitches. That way when you do make the turn, you're going to be able to slide the hitch back and buy you that extra space that you need. Other than that, not really a whole lot to this. B&W makes excellent parts. I've personally recommended these to my own friends and family. And if it's something that I need, that's usually where I go to first. Just a big fan of them because all their parts actually work like you'd want them to. So really can't go wrong. As far as the installation goes, it's really not too bad. Definitely time consuming. Actually getting the center part of the hitch in place is probably the trickiest part. Just not a ton of room there, and you're kind of trying to work everything in. But once it's there, it's really not bad. Everything's pretty easy to get to. So take your time, stay focused. You should be in pretty good shape. If this is something you don't want to have to deal with trying to install, you just might not have the time or something like that, completely get it. You can always check our dealer locator, and hopefully that can point you towards a shop that might be able to help you out with that. But for those of you doing it yourself, feel free to hang around. We'll go ahead and get started on it now. To begin our installation, we're going to be working underneath the back of our truck, and first thing you want to do is just temporarily lower and remove the spare tire. Just gives you a lot more room to work under here. We can get this tire heat shield removed now, and on each side of it you're going to have 3 13mm head bolts, just like these here. And we can lower it down for now. There's going to be this heat shield that is kind of tied up tight against the bottom of our bed. Well, this cross member that runs just above our rear axle, we're going to have to cut it, right? So I drew a line there. You can reference the instructions. More or less, you just don't want any material to hang past the front of this cross member. So I'm just going to cut it pretty close to those fasteners. You can use a pair of 10 snips or whatever you got. I'm just going to use a multi-tool to get it trimmed out here. If you move forward to the next cross member, the very front part of the heat shield is going to be bolted to it. So one on each side, a T25 Torx bit that you can remove. The shield will drop down out of the way. Ours are seized in there and can't get them out. Yeah, I got one of them to spin, but it just spins. So I guess the fastener inside is rusted or something. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut this material out to get it out of the way. So that's something you can do if you find yourself in that same situation. Head free though, and work this piece out from under the truck. With this step, it's not absolutely necessary, but the amount of effort it takes to do this and the benefit that we get from it makes it worthwhile. We're going to lower the exhaust some, so on each side by the tailpipe, you're going to have a hanger with one 15mm head bolt that we can remove. And from this point on, whatever we do to one side of the truck, we'll also do to the other side. It'll be set up the same way. So we'll go ahead and get this pulled out. Got the other side out already. And now that'll just give us a little bit of extra space to maneuver this around when we go to put the hitch up. Just over here on the driver's side, we're gonna have this bracket that's holding or supporting some of our brake lines. Well, that's gonna be in our way when we go to put the hitch up, so we'll remove the 2 bolts holding it in with 13mm. Kind of just let it hang for now. Once everything's back together, we will re-secure this. In the middle of the truck, just in front of and above the rear differential, there's this other bracket here that's holding on some of this wiring. There's 2 10mm head nuts, just like this one. So one there and then one a little over to the other side. So we'll get both of those removed. Those 2 nuts off, you should be able to kind of work this around. And ours is super tight on here, but should be able to kind of work this off here. And there we go. What I did, okay, that makes sense. The holes are slotted. So I just pushed it over towards the driver's side, and then that allowed this piece to drop down. Just over here on the passenger side, you can see this bundle of wiring that runs, and it eventually goes on top of the frame rail here by the upper shock mount. And there's a plastic clip kind of pressing that wiring into the frame. You want to pry up on it. You just kind of pull it down and out of the way. If your truck is equipped with wheel well liners, you're going to have to remove those. In our case, kind of lucked out. Ours does not have them, so we don't have to worry about it. But if yours does, usually, from my experience, they're usually Torx bit screws, kind of just throughout the liner. Go ahead, pull all the fasteners out, and those liners will just drop down. Up in the bed of the truck now, we can mark out where we're going to need to drill our opening. And so whenever you measure, you want to measure from the actual bed, okay? Nothing to do with the tailgate. And check your instructions too, because depending on your bed length, your measurement might vary. So I made a mark there. And also, we have nothing in the bed. If you have a spray-in bed liner or a drop-in, those drop-in liners, definitely recommend just to take them out and then reinstall it once the hitch is in. With the spray-in bed liners, though, take into account that thickness of it. But with that said, so we got our distance, and then you need to make sure it's centered. So you can measure from wheel well to wheel well, split the difference, and that'll give you your center point. Got my hole saw here, and I'm all lined up, and I like to cut a hole on a piece of plywood. That way when I'm drilling the hole, I can stand on this and give it a little support and prevent this from kind of walking on me here. With this hole made, I'm going to come back with a file and just kind of take off some of the sharp edges. That all cleaned up, since we have some bare metal exposed now, not a bad idea to take some paint I'm just using this little primer stick here, but regular spray paint will work too. And put a layer over that bare metal, that way it doesn't rust. Over on the driver's side, we can take our front crossmember bracket, and this is going to sit in there like this, right? And this second hole here from the driver's side, you want to take one of these bolts, come in like that, and take the O-ring that they give you, slide that on. That's just going to keep that bolt in place. Get it on there good. And then we can take this and I'm going to slide it all the way in here. So we get it on top of the passenger side frame rail. And once you do, you can kind of roll this to get it vertical like that. I'm going to just roughly prepare this lifting apparatus. It makes it a lot easier when we go to put the center section of our hitch in. You know, when we get it close, we can set this up and it'll hold it perfectly in position. So just get a couple blocks of wood and then a strap. We'll go something like this, and then once that center section is in here, you can hook the ends of that to the locking pin in the center section and tighten it up, tighten the strap up, and it'll pull it up into the opening that we drilled. Something that I'm going to try to do, I have a jack here, and I'm lifting the truck up by the frame. I'm not even getting it off the ground or anything, but what I'm looking to do is increase the distance between the axle and the bottom of our bed, because with the exhaust here and everything, even though we undid it, we can move it around. That gap's kind of tight, so opening this up should make it easier to get the center section in. With the center section, you want the handle mechanism to face towards the driver's side, and what we're going to try here, I got a buddy up in the bed of the truck that is going to operate the lifting apparatus that we made. So I'm going to try to hold this up, take our hooks, I'll loop them around that pin there, kind of hold this up tight against the bottom, and then he can cinch up that strap to hopefully keep it in position. Be careful while you're doing this. You know, there's fuel lines and stuff underneath here that you don't want to damage. So I found out if you kind of go in like this and then rotate it and then push it back and then up again, you'll get it pretty close here. So I'm just try to keep maneuvering it until we get it where we need it to go. I was able to get that center section in there, and it's tight, don't get me wrong. So you'll probably have to fight it a little bit, but right now it's kind of just sitting in position. I got the strap connected to it, and if we pull up on that strap and tighten it up, kind of help guide this into the opening where it needs to go. Back over here on the driver's side wheel well, we can take the rear cross member, and you know, there's these threaded holes in it and they're offset. When we put this in here, we want the holes offset up towards the bottom of the truck bed. So, you know, this part will be facing up towards the sky. And since these holes are threaded, I do like to take one of the bolts that thread in here and just check each hole, because sometimes what can happen is powder coat gets kind of clogged up in there and makes it tough to get these started. A lot easier to run this through and clean them out now as opposed to trying to do it above your head in a tight spot. So do that, and then this is going to slide on top of the frame. Just like more or less how we did the front one. Probably do. It's just so tight. Probably go underneath the truck and finish pulling it off to the other side and get it rotated. Get this piece rotated and roughly lined up here. You want to make sure, take a peek inside of the bed of the truck, make sure that the hitch is still aligned in the hole that we created. And then at that point, you can just slide your front cross member and back one tight up against the hitch. And the openings in the center section are going to line up with the holes in the front cross member. And with these, you can take a bolt and from the front to the back like that, push it through. And you can put on a flat washer, a split lock washer, take a hex nut, and just get all those started hand tight. To attach the center section to the rear cross member, you can just take a bolt, put on a split lock washer and a flat washer, line everything up, and get those started as well. You can take these U-bolts now, and you have one for each side. It's going to go around the frame, a little ways ahead of our rear axle. And when you put these in, they just wrap around the frame. You want to make sure that you're going to clear any wiring or brake lines or anything like that. So we'll just rotate it and roughly get it into position here. You can now grab one of our fish wires, a carriage bolt, and the spacer block here. You'll set it up like this, and you can take the bolt that's going to thread onto the fish wire, and then this oval shaped hole here in the frame right above our jounce bumper, that hole goes straight through to the outside of our truck. We're going to take this straight end here, push it right through to where we can grab it on the other side, and then we'll just feed this hardware into the frame just like that until we pull it and it'll come out the other side of the frame. The outside of the frame, here's that oval shaped hole that goes straight through. You can pull the bolt through, and then I'm going to take this spacer, slide that on. And this is going to fit just like that. Then we'll remove our pull wire, and you want to keep some pressure on the bolt while you're doing this, that way it don't fall back in there. And then there's this little retainer. With it, you could just thread it onto the bolt all the way down, and that'll keep it where it needs to be. You can take our side plate, and these are going to be side specific, so check the instructions, it'll tell you which one to use. And the bolt that we fish wired through the frame, that'll go through this opening. The U-bolt will go through these two openings, and when we slide this on, you're going to put on a flat washer, a split lock washer, and a nut on all three of those attachment points. So we'll just kind of work this in here. If the U-bolt ends up falling out, not a huge deal. I'll just slide it back into place because it's kind of tough to get everything lined up perfectly, so we'll get everything going here. And then we'll get all of the hardware started hand tight. Bolt the side plates to our cross members now, and so for this one, just take a bolt, put on a split lock washer, line up there. Get that going a few turns. That's why we leave everything loose too, so you can kind of work it back and forth and get it lined up and everything. And then for this one, take another bolt, run it through the front, from front to the back, put on a split lock washer and a hex nut. Back underneath, you want to lightly just snug up the bolts, all the hardware for that matter, that's attaching the center section to the cross members. And you don't have to get carried away, like I said, just snug here. I'm using a 3/4 inch wrench and socket to do this. Before you go any further, definitely not a bad idea to get up in the bed of the truck and just make sure the hitch is still, centered and true and how you want it positioned. Back to the wheel wells, you can also check that the spacing is going to be the same, meaning this rear cross member, the distance that it is from the hat channel, which is this piece here, which on this truck it pretty much butts up against it completely, so just make sure you're the same on each side. Everything's square, looking good. And then we'll come back and snug up the bolts, attaching the side plates to the cross members. And then the U-bolt. And when you do the U-bolt, you want to kind of alternate between the two nuts. That way, when you snug it down, it's going to draw everything out evenly. Now you want to make sure and come back with a torque wrench and tighten down all the hardware to the amount specified in the instructions. And you want to use that same tightening sequence that we just did. And starting with the center section bolts, then moving to the side plates and everything. So go ahead and get that done. Once you have the hitch all torqued down, you can take your handle and work it through like this. And this piece, you go through a little opening there, and it's going to line up with the lever mechanism. And from there you can take this little carriage bolt here, run that through the mechanism, put the the handle through it, put the bolt through it, and on the back side of that carriage bolt, just put on one of these flange nuts here. Once you got that nut started hand tight, come back with a 1/2 inch and tighten it down. On the bottom side of our center section, on each side of it, there's going to be 2 holes in it, and those are for our safety chain attachment points there. And so I'm going to use a drill bit and drill up through them, using them as guides through the bed of our truck. Up in the truck bed, I removed our holding apparatus, get it out of the way. Our holes are drilled. I came back and put some paint on them, on that bare metal, let them dry. And now you can take the safety chain U-bolts, drop them right on through. Back underneath the truck where the U-bolts come through, you can take the spring, put put it on there like that, and then take one of the nuts, get that started hand tight. Once you have both springs on, come back with a 3/4 inch socket, and you're just going to snug the nut down until the bottom of the nut is flush with the bottom of the U-bolt. At this point, I went ahead, resecured those brackets that we loosened up. I just put them back together the opposite way that we removed them. And if you're not going to be doing in-bed trailer wiring, you could always reinstall the tire heat shield as well, and the spare tire. But we're going to be doing that next, so I'm going to leave that off so we have a little bit more room. But with that said, that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the B&W Underbed trailer hitch on our 2019 Chevrolet Silverado 1500.